got that son of her skin tone, and the hair is kinda orange. But last time I checked my passport, there was nothing about the sorting. It's not a race, it's a hair dye choice.
Is, why is ginger not a race? It's why is ginger not? Why am I here? Hold on, y'all. That's why. Okay. Ginger is a physical trait rather than a race or ethnicity because it describes a genetic variation rather than a shared geographic ancestry, culture, or distinct racial category. Okay, ginger is a genetic mutation. It's caused by. I messed that up. Is it genetic? Yes, it's caused by a genetic mutation. Red hair is caused by a simple recessive genetic mutation. A person needs to inherit the gene variant from both parents to have red hair regardless of their border, racial, or ethnic heritage. Okay. Is this what I need? Yes. So,
wrong on that point.
forgot to say. My fault. Not that. That. Should change. That's behind.
I would just like to say, gingers are not a race, and you're really wrong on that point. Jews are classified as.
Hold on. Why am I not full screen? And why aren't the Okay, it is. Not. And why am I not live on Hango now? Oh well.
I would just like to say, gingers are not a race, and you're really wrong on that point. Jews are classified as Jews, but that's not. Nobody considers that a race. It's considered a religion. At least everybody who has knowledge of it, that's what it is. People are talking shit because you're making such a big deal about it. Like, I have red hair, but I don't go around yelling about it and making videos and then wondering why everybody's mad. It's one thing if you are right, but the whole thing that gingers are a race is not. Jamaicans aren't a race either. They are considered African. If you get a standardized test, there's no thing that says I'm Jamaican. It's I'm Caucasian, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Native American, I'm African. There's nothing that says, yes, I'm Jamaican. And the video, like, you're making an ass out of yourself, really. I'm ginger. People always, like, hate. They all have their ginger jokes. And I'm above that. I can take it out. If I have a problem with them, I let them know. But just making these videos, you're making unjust claims that's not true. People are making such a big deal because you're overreacting about it, and you're getting a lot of negative comments here because you are wrong, and you claim that ginger should keep going because it gets better. You're making all these videos freaking out about being a redhead because you can't deal with it. If this is your relief point,
Like one thing is another, I forgot to mute. Hang on. I would start the video.
I would just like to say, gingers are not a race, and you're really wrong on that point. Jews are classified as Jews, but that's not. Nobody considers that a race. It's considered a religion. At least everybody who has knowledge of it, that's what it is. People are talking shit because you're making such a big deal about it. Like, I have red hair, but I don't go around yelling about it. And making videos and then wondering why everybody's mad. It's one thing if you are right, but the whole thing that gingers are a race is not. Jamaicans aren't a race either. They are considered African. If you get a standardized test, there's no thing that says I'm Jamaican. It's I'm Caucasian, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Native American, I'm African. There's nothing that says, yes, I'm Jamaican. And the video, like, you're making an ass out of yourself, really. I'm ginger. People always, like, hate. They all have their ginger jokes. And I'm above that. I can take it out. If I have a problem with them, I let them know. But just making these videos, you're making unjust claims that's not true. People are making such a big deal because you're overreacting about it, and you're getting a lot of negative comments here because you are wrong, and you claim that Ginger should keep going because it gets better. You're making all these videos freaking out about being a redhead because you can't deal with it. If this is your relief point, that's great, but maybe you should just make them and keep them to yourself. Guaranteed at first I thought your video, like I think it was your very first video, it was great and I totally agreed with you and everything there. But now I'm just watching some of the videos, and especially this one, I clicked on it because I thought you were saying gingers are not a race, we're average people, and so on. And I was kind of shocked to hear you think we actually are a race. We are not a race. We are just a specific group of people who can be classified as a certain type. Just like Jews can, just like Catholics can. We're not special people. We're not a race. And thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's move on. Where are the most gingers in the world? They're in northeastern Europe. You can read that anyway. The gingers have souls. Apparently they do. Can a person, this is the debate everybody's been going on about. Can a person become a ginger with hair dye? Yes, a person can make their hair look ginger, but by using hair dye, but it does not change the true biological hair color or genetics. So that's what I'm looking for. Anyway, unbiased answer, not a straight answer. Do they tan? Yes. Well, let's see. No, they cannot. Never mind. Okay. They get darker when they age. No, natural redheads typically do not go gray instead of turning a silver or charcoal gray. Ginger hair keeps its pigment longer, slowly fades through shades of rose gold, copper, strawberry blonde, or stark white. So they do get white. I don't know why it said. Okay. Let me. I just did all that and you can't hear me. Let me restart. Where was I? What the? No. Where was I at? Where was I at? Okay. I was right there. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out where I was, but okay. Can't hear me from there. Then you go back to Freckles. No. Oh god. Okay. Let me exit out there before you hear me again. Uh, a variation in the MC1R gene changes how their bodies produce pigment. Uh, The pigment needed to be ginger, melanin, resulting in low levels of protective urulin and higher levels of whatever that word is, which does not block the UV radiation. Okay. You see that? I gotta read it. I'm gonna start pre-recording my videos and put them up on YouTube on here. You're not a ginger naturally, which that makes sense to me, but I have more people than this. They can pay back. People have red or ginger hair because of the specific change in DNA because of the genes. Why is it called ginger? One's hair is called ginger because of the historical link to the warm reddish brown and copper colors of the ginger spice, as well as Old British slang. Interesting. Okay, then go to ginger's extinct and share that one. Okay.
You know, redheads take a lot of crap. Not only do they
I forgot to mute again. Okay.
You know, redheads take a lot of crap. Not only do they fall prey to nicknames like Big Red, Rusty, and Daywalker, they also carry a rich history of misunderstanding on their frequently freckled shoulders. In Greek mythology, it was said that redheads turn into vampires when they die. Egyptians particularly enjoyed burning ginger virgins, and a number of alchemist spells called for the fat of a flame-haired man. If that weren't enough, in recent years there have been headlines suggesting that redheads will actually go extinct within this century. A lot of the ignorance surrounding redheadedness probably has to do with the fact that although they aren't very rare, redheads aren't very common either. Though certain countries like Ireland and Scotland seem to be hosting perpetual Weasley family reunions, gingers only make up about 1 to 2% of the world population. And they don't have red hair because they stole hellfire or were conceived during menstruation or bitten by a werewolf as a baby. They get their coppery hue the same way we all get our coloration, from melanin. Hair color is a genetic trait associated with the melanocortin-1 receptor, or MC1R gene. We all have it, nestled on our chromosome 16, but your redheaded friends possess a mutated version of it. This gene gives instructions for making protein receptors located on our melanocytes, the special cells that produce melanin. Melanin is what gives our eyes, hair, and skin their distinct hue, and it comes in 2 varieties: eumelanin and pheomelanin. A person producing mostly eumelanin will have darker hair and skin that tans easily and is better protected from the sun's UV radiation. But if you're brewing mostly pheomelanin, you're gonna have reddish or blonde hair, fair skin that burns easily because it's not naturally protected from the sun. That's why fair folk have an increased risk of skin cancer. It's that MC1R gene that dictates what kind of melanin you get. If the gene is activated, you'll end up with more eumelanin and will be darker complected. If those receptors don't trigger, your cells pump out the fair pheomelanin. We're not exactly sure just how far back the trait goes, but scientists recently extracted a version of the ginger gene from the remains of 2 Neanderthals, indicating that at least some of them were redheads. However, the gene was a variant, not the one present in modern humans, indicating the mutation evolved independently from human redheadedness in an example of convergent evolution. Now you may be wondering why both humans and Neanderthal genes would perpetuate a skin type so prone to sunburns. Well, it has to do in part with geography. People from equatorial regions usually have darker hair and skin to better protect them from the sun's radiation, whereas fair skin and hair is more prevalent in northern areas with lower levels of sunlight. The farther you move from the equator, the more that selective pressure for darker pigmentation lessens, and the mutant MC1R genes are not selected against, so they can spread throughout a population. And then, hello, Scotland! The successful spread of this mutation may be because fair skin is better at generating vitamin D, which could have actually given flame hairs an evolutionary advantage in the perpetually cloudy north. But you may have also heard that gingers are kind of babies when it comes to pain, and I hate to say it, but there's some truth to that. A couple of studies funded by the National Institutes of Health found that redheads are actually more sensitive to thermal pain, or excessive heat and cold, and that they actually required, on average, nearly 20% higher doses of anesthetic than their dark-haired counterparts. And researchers aren't entirely sure what's going on here, but one hypothesis connects pain tolerance to that tricksy MC1R gene. Since the gene is responsible for the receptors of pigment-producing hormones, they may also interact with similar molecules like endorphins, our body's natural painkillers. And finally, what about that great imminent ginger extinction? That, I can tell you, is bogus. Yes, the mutation is a recessive trait, meaning that both parents have to carry the allele or gene variant for it to produce a red-haired offspring. But that still means that even if, say, 4% of the population actually has red hair, perhaps 30% still carry that gene, keeping the potential for ginger generations alive, and not just in the UK. So rest assured, gingers are going to be passing along their genes and supporting the sunscreen industry for a very long time. Thank you for watching this SciShow Dose, and a big thanks to our subscribers on Subbable, without whom you would not be watching this. Would you like us to tweet you a picture from our beautiful studio, or add your custom message to our doobly-doo? To learn more about these and other exclusive perks, go to Subbable.com. And if you have an idea you'd like us to cover, or question, or comment, leave it for us in the comments below, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and go to youtube.com/scishow and subscribe.
I'm doing my live stream right now on YouTube. This will not want to know.
account for 1 to 2% of the population, but the lore around us seems a lot bigger than that, assuming we have sharp tempers or that people with red hair get mad easily. None of this is founded in scientific research. I never get pissed off. But I do have a hard time feeling any physical pain, and new scientific research explains why us redheads have a distorted perception of pain. Each of your roughly 30 to 37 trillion human cells have genes tightly wound Thanks to KiwiCo for sponsoring today's video. Us redheads account for 1 to 2% of the population, but the lore around us seems a lot bigger than that, assuming we have sharp tempers or that people with red hair get mad easily. None of this is founded in scientific research. I never get pissed off. But I do have a hard time feeling any physical pain, and new scientific research explains why us redheads have a distorted perception of pain. Each of your roughly 30 to 37 trillion human cells have genes tightly wound up in the nucleus, where proteins, called histones, keep those genes tightly packed. In fact, if unraveled, the DNA in each of your human cells would stretch to around 2 meters, meaning that if strung end to end, all of your DNA could travel to the moon and back over 150,000 times. I had to keep verifying this research because it's like, how'd that possible? The histone proteins carefully unravel the genes in specific ways to be read by proteins that create more proteins that control every aspect of your life. You can now understand how complex these genes are in relation to our lives, but in 2003, when we sequenced the human genome, we entered a new era of genetic research. Some of the research that I'm obsessed with are genome-wide association studies, where they look at large swaths of genes and then they start to be able to link them to things like depression and aggression and even being gay. More info by clicking the card here. We made a video on it. Gay rights. Because red hair is something that we can see physically, we can study it much more easily. There are still many complicated genes that control red hair, but the gene that we're going to be talking about today is the MC1R gene, which also relates to how weirdly we feel pain. The MC1R gene is a recessive gene, which means you need 2 copies of the gene for it to be expressed physically. For example, you inherited 2 gene copies of any given trait from your birth parents. 1 inherited from whoever birthed you from their vagina, and 1 inherited from whoever put their semen in that vagina. These are known as maternal alleles and paternal alleles, and how they interact make the unique characteristics of you. A dominant allele is one that always determines the phenotype, or physical expression when present. On the other hand, a recessive allele, like red hair, is one that is not expressed when it's paired with an allele that is dominant. Recessive alleles only express themselves physically when you have 2 recessive alleles from your parents. So redheads need to have 2 recessive alleles to have red hair. And now it's Punnett Square time! Punnett Square time! If one of your parents is a redhead and the other has black hair but is a carrier, there's a 50% chance you will have red hair. If both of your parents have black hair but are carriers, there is a 25% chance you could have red hair. My mom has red hair, my dad has dark brown hair, so he must have been a carrier for me to have red hair. If he wasn't, then I wouldn't have ended up with this red beard that kind of turns blonde when I bleach it in the sun, and sometimes I even put lemon in it to make it blonde, don't tell anyone. Speaking of my family, before we get to the scientific truth about gingers and pain, we need to talk about today's sponsor, KiwiCo, which was the best gift I've ever given my family, aside from whenever I bless them with my presents. I'm not kidding, I bought my nephew the koala crate, and now every month he gets hands-on projects delivered to him in the mail that help get him interested in science, technology, engineering, and art. My family loves them, my sister loves them, I love them. Whenever I'm looking after him, I just open up a crate. He's amused, he's learning, they're very tactile. I am now the best uncle. By using kiwico.com/asap, you get your first month free. Each box comes with all of the supplies. That's the best feeling. It's all in there. You don't have to run to the store. There's different boxes for different ages. He's 3, so I got him the one for 2 to 4-year-olds. You can get the 14+ ones, which I actually personally like. You know, I get to build myself headphones. Hello. Now when I wear my headphones, people say, where you get them? I say, I made them. Use kiwico.com/asap for your first month free. You also help our show. We're honestly just obsessed with KiwiCo, but now, back to how the MC1R variant affects Ginger's ability to feel pain. When you have red hair, you have the MC1R gene variant. And this variant leads to an abnormal, in quotes, melanocortin-1 receptor protein on the surface of your melanocytes, which controls the color of your hair and skin. Your melanocytes are in the basal membrane of your skin and produce 2 kinds of melanin, pheomelanin and eumelanin. Eumelanin is more prominent in people with darker skin, but the abnormal red hair MCR1 protein releases mostly pheomelanin. This causes you to grow red hair, have freckles, and be fair-skinned / more sensitive to skin cancer. It is this specific MC1R gene that links directly to why us redheads have distorted perceptions of pain and why we're freaks of nature. Edit that out, keep that in, edit that out. Don't tell anyone. What? What's going on YouTube? Oh. When researchers induced the MC1R gene in mice, they found that when prodding the mice, the control group felt significantly more pain than the ones with the modified redhead MC1R gene. They felt less pain. Another study found that MC1R mutant redhead mice were less sensitive to poisonous stings. The biochemical reason for this is that the MC1R redhead gene variant created melanocytes that secrete lower levels of the protein called propriomelanocortin, POMC for short. POMC is cut up to create hormones that increase pain perception and also affects the MC4R proteins, which increase pain tolerance overall. But with science, it's not always that simple, and there's a couple of wrenches that have been thrown into this. For example, it has been found that redheads have more sensitivity to thermal pain. When exposing brown-haired women and red-haired women to extreme cold or hot temperatures, the redheads seem to feel it more. This study relied on subjective responses to women being put in painful situations, but there are a few other studies that back up this research that redheads are more sensitive to hot and cold. The reason this information is medically important is that some doctors think we need to look at redheads differently when we're giving anesthesia. Also, maybe with CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing, I can get my little redhead kids to have a bit more pain perception, because sometimes my leg's freaking bleeding. I look down, I haven't even noticed. It's like maybe I needed to get a band-aid on that before I was infected. Also, sometimes when I'm making jokes to my friends, I'm like, yeah, shut up, and I like punch them and they're like, ow, and I'm like, oh, that hurt. Because like when people punch me, I'm just like, oh, that felt kind of good. I'm happy to be alive in 2021, a time where we can understand this complex genetic science and link it to my physiological experience. Because 6,000 years ago, it was thought that redheads were witches. If I was alive then, I would be a redhead who was gay, and I would definitely have been burned at the stake. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week for a new science video.
Alright, this one's part 2 for the was not a race. Sorry, y'all. Let's try this again.
Looks as if Jesus is standing right over there. Okay, so welcome to the Voice of Reason. This is a video response being made for Copper Cab's. Looks as if Jesus is standing right over there. Okay, so welcome to the Voice of Reason. This is a video response being made for Copper Cab's Gingers Aren't a Race. I hate to break it to you, Copper Cab, but they're not. Okay, so there are a few things that we need to get straight, Copper Cap. Okay. First, Jews aren't a race. Jews are people who follow the Jewish faith. So by calling them a Jew, you're identifying them by their religious background. Second, Jamaican is not a race. Okay? Jamaicans are a people from Jamaica, mostly African American or black, what have you. But their race is African American, okay? But they're from Jamaica. Okay, that's like saying that American is a race. It isn't a race. Americans are people, black or white, that are from America. Okay. So by saying that Jews are a race, that's wrong. Jews are people who follow the Jewish faith. For example, people from Israel, for the most part, follow the Jewish faith. Saying they're Jew, that's correct, because they follow the Jewish faith. But their race is Israeli, okay? Gingers are white people with red hair, okay? Are you saying that my race is brunette? Don't you only call girls brunettes? I don't know. That sounds kind of gay, man. Yeah, because you say girls are brunettes. Copper Cab, I'm going to say this on behalf of everyone who has made comments that gingers are not a race. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Gingers are not a race. Okay? Repeat after me. Gingers are not a race. Okay? They're not a race. Sorry. Okay, there's a couple things you need to do. You're making things worse for yourself by making these videos, okay? 1, get your facts straight. You're going to school right now, talk to your teachers. A ginger, which is what you are, a red-haired person, your race is white. You are a variant of the Caucasian race. Just like I am a variant because I have brown hair. I have brown hair, okay? I'm white. I look like a ghost, okay? I look like a ghost, okay? I'm very white. Okay? Red-haired people, brown-haired people, black-haired people, blonde people, those are all variants of the white race, the Caucasian race, okay? So your gingers are not a race, you're part of the white race, okay? Okay, there's a couple things that you need to do. 1, get your facts straight. 2, calm down. 3, think about what you're saying before you say it, okay? Think about what you're saying before you say it. You're making things worse for yourself. Unless, of course, you're faking, and this whole thing is just a way to get attention. Because this guy makes money off of his movies, folks. You know, he sells t-shirts, that makes him money. Every video he makes, he gets money. There is a very realistic possibility that this guy is just acting very emotional with the crazy sunglasses, just to get more views, which means more publicity, which means more people will buy his shirts, which means more money in his pocket. Okay? I'm not saying that you're fake, but all I'm saying is that the possibility really does exist. So this has been an episode, the first. I didn't want this to be the first episode of my show. I was thinking of putting up a show called The Voice of Reason, where I would just talk about things that, that matter to me, or that we, issues that arise. I was thinking about doing that. I was originally going to have my first video be a response to a guy called Philip DeFranco. A great show, love what he's doing. But I saw this video and I just couldn't take it. The ignorance really gets to me. you know. So I had to do something. Anyways, guys, people who see this, rate, comment. I'd love to hear what you guys think. You know, let's up this video. Let's get a lot of views, because one thing I've noticed is movies with lots of views get lots more views, you know, and then he'll see it and maybe he'll actually see reason. There's a very bright light over there. And that's why I look this white. I'll give Copper Kev a run for his money. So this has been the first episode of The Voice of Reason. Hopefully there will be more. I don't know why I said hopefully there will be more. I'm a wise guy, your host, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed what I had to say. If you guys want to make a video response to what I have to say, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, man, that light is bright. But yeah, so rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.
Alright. Are gingers black? No. Gingers are not black. Are racially white and not black. Though some black people can naturally have red hair. That idea that gingers are black is a viral social media and TikTok trend. Social trend, so it's not even true. There's a pros. Don't we need to over that? Cons. What? I thought okay. What causes the genetic mutation? You can go on about that. It'd be too long for me to read it. Oh, okay. He'll explain it. Just try and go on speed to this because it's my last one. No. I want to open the link.
This St. Paddy's Day, we wanted to celebrate something besides green beers. How about Ireland's other famous calling card, redheads? Today we're digging into the chemistry of those fiery locks and finding out that those aren't the only thing that makes redheads unique. Chemically speaking, the thing that sets redheads apart from the crowd is pigmentation, and in particular, pigments known as melanins. Not only does this stuff give color to your skin, but your hair as well. More on that later. Melanin is produced by special cells called melanocytes, which make two different kinds. This St. Paddy's Day, we wanted to celebrate something besides green beers. How about Ireland's other famous calling card, redheads? Today we're digging into the chemistry of those fiery locks and finding out that those aren't the only thing that makes redheads unique. Chemically speaking, the thing that sets redheads apart from the crowd is pigmentation, and in particular, pigments known as melanins. Not only does this stuff give color to your skin, but your hair as well. More on that later. Melanin is produced by special cells called melanocytes, which make two different kinds, eumelanin, which ranges from brown to black, and pheomelanin, which ranges from yellow to red. When UV light rays hit your skin, your melanocytes increase melanin production to protect your cells. The dark color from eumelanin dissipates absorbed radiation as heat, which stops the damaging UV from reaching your DNA where it can cause mutations and start some forms of cancer. People from sunnier regions of Earth are genetically predisposed to having higher quantities of eumelanin to keep them safe from the intensity of UV. So as far as environmental factors go, is there really that little sunlight in Ireland? Redheads have a particularly high abundance of pheomelanin with very little eumelanin, so what's the deal? On the surface of melanocytes is a protein called the melanocortin-1 receptor, or MC1R for short. When activated, MC1R causes melanocytes to specifically produce eumelanin over pheomelanin, which ultimately balances out an individual's ratio. Redheads are born with a genetic variant that causes MC1R to chemically function differently on melanocytes, resulting in less eumelanin and more pheomelanin production. Now, these genetic variations are recessive, which means that in order to have a red-headed kid, both parents need to carry the MC1R mutation. In this case, neither parent has red hair, but they're both the carrier, so there's a 25% chance that they'll have a redhead. If one parent is a redhead and the other is a carrier, there's a 50-50 chance. And you guessed it, folks, if both parents are redheads, they have almost a 100% chance of having a red-headed kid. Now, about that hair, how does melanin production affect its color? At the bulb of a hair follicle, these pigment-producing melanocytes form protein clusters called melanosomes. These clusters become bound with the keratin that's produced to form hair as it grows. With an overabundance of reddish pheomelanin, you can guess why the hair turns out red. With non-redheads, a mix of different pigments including eumelanin make for a rainbow of hair colors. While that pale skin makes redheads susceptible to sunburn and skin cancers like melanoma, their genetic difference may affect the way they feel pain as well. Research has shown that redheads have a higher sensitivity to different types of pain and a slightly greater sensitivity to cold than others in the population. Some other small studies have suggested that redheads might need more anesthesia during surgery as well. No one has pinpointed exactly why redhead genetics result in a different sort of pain, but one finding suggests that MC1R is expressed in the neurons of the periaqueductal gray, an ancient part of the brain that governs some pain sensation. Genetic variants may heighten this neural activity, giving redheads a different sensitivity. But most of all, redheads are a big part of Irish heritage, and for that, we here at Reactions will raise up a big green glass to MC1R proteins. If you have any chemistry-related questions, make sure to post them down in the comments for us, and we'll try to get back to them. Don't forget to hit thumbs up and subscribe on the way out, and we'll see you again soon.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a fascinating and honestly kind of funny question. Why do redheads need more anesthesia than everyone else? Now this isn't just an old wives' tale or something your dentist made up after struggling with a red-haired patient. There's actually hard science behind it. In fact, multiple research studies have shown that people with natural red hair often require more anesthesia, sometimes significantly more than their brown or black-haired counterparts. This is one of those topics that blends genetics, anesthesiology, and a little bit of fun. And I'll be honest, it's also one of my favorite anesthesia trivia facts to pull out at dinner parties. Most of the time, people don't even know that it's actually a thing. So today we're going to break it down. What's going on genetically, what studies have discovered, how it impacts anesthesia care, and why it's such a great example of personalized medicine in action. Long before the science caught up and genetics became a buzzword, anesthesiologists and dentists had been noticing that people with red hair seem to have a need for more of certain types of anesthesia than other people. But for a long time, it was just kind of a hunch. So imagine that you're an anesthesiologist and you're giving a patient an inhaled anesthetic for a routine procedure. You're slowly increasing the dial, watching the patient's response, but your patient isn't getting sleepy at the same concentration that usually works for everyone else. So you keep going up little by little, and finally, at like a pretty hefty dose, they finally drift off. Or maybe you're a dentist, and one of your red-headed patients gets the standard lidocaine injection, but 10 minutes later, they're still feeling everything when you start to drill. So you refill your syringe with more anesthetic and keep giving more and more, but it just doesn't seem to work. Now, if you're not in medicine, maybe you're thinking, what are they talking about? It sounds like witchcraft or something.
Or maybe you've heard your redheaded friends talk about it. I need double injections when I go to a dentist. Ain't a lucky me. At first people thought this was just folklore, or maybe it was coincidence. Maybe dentists are just easily distracted by freckles. But eventually science would step in and say, actually, hold on a minute, there's something real going on here. So what really makes redheads different? The answer lies in a gene called MC1R, which stands for melanocortin-1 receptor. MC1R is a receptor found on the surface of melanocytes, the pigment-producing cells in our skin and hair. Normally when stimulated, MC1R helps produce a pigment called eumelanin, which is the dark pigment that gives us black and brown hair. But when MC1R is affected by a specific kind of mutation, which is what happens in most natural redheads, the receptor doesn't work in the same way. Instead of triggering the melanocytes to produce eumelanin, they produce a different pigment called pheomelanin, which is reddish yellow in color. And that's why red hair happens. But interestingly, the MC1R gene isn't only expressed on pigment cells. It's also expressed on neurons, astrocytes, and microglia, which are types of cells found in the brain. In these cells, activation of MC1R alters the way they interact with pathways that are involved in pain perception and opioid receptor function. That means the same gene that gives someone red hair also changes how their nervous system processes pain and how it responds to certain types of anesthetics. Isn't that awesome? Well, I mean, I guess not when you're screaming in pain during a root canal, but I just mean in general. It's crazy. Okay, so now let's talk about the hard evidence. One of the most famous studies about this came out in 2004 in the journal Anesthesiology. Researchers looked at women with natural red hair and compared them to women with dark hair using desflurane, which is an inhaled anesthetic. What they found was really interesting. The redheads needed almost 20% more desflurane to achieve the same level of anesthesia as the dark-haired women. Now that's not just a tiny difference. In anesthesia, we titrate drugs pretty carefully because even a few percentage points matter. So a nearly 20% difference is a clinically important finding. Another study looked at local anesthetics, like the lidocaine that dentists inject before drilling. And it found that redheads were less sensitive to the numbing effects, meaning they often needed higher doses or multiple injections. And a third study found that redheads may be more resistant to certain types of pain medications. So when your ginger friend says, "That numbing medicine never works on me," they're not just being dramatic. Their MC1R mutation is literally making multiple different types of anesthesia drugs less effective. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. It's not just about needing more drugs. Redheads also appear to process pain differently than other people do. Research has shown that they're more sensitive to thermal pain. For example, they might find a hot stove or a cold ice pack more painful than someone with dark hair would. But paradoxically, they appear to be less sensitive to electrical pain. So if I give them a mild electric shock, which I'm not recommending, they might just be like, yeah, what's the big deal? Whereas someone with brown or black hair might jump or scream and freak out. Now this tells us something really important. The way pain is experienced isn't uniform across all people. It's not just high pain tolerance or low pain tolerance, it's modality specific, meaning that different pathways in the nervous system can be dialed up or down depending on genetics. For anesthesiologists, this means we have to be vigilant, not just with dosing, but also with anticipating unusual responses to pain and sedation. Okay, so let's get practical now. What does all this mean for us when we're caring for patients? Well, first, if you're an anesthesiologist and you see a redhead on your OR schedule, it should make you think, okay, this person might need higher doses of anesthesia. Not always, but often enough that it's worth paying attention and asking them if their hair color is natural. Second, we should listen to our patients. If a redhead tells you that local anesthetics never work for them, they're probably right, and you should adjust your plan accordingly. Third, we need to be careful with balance. It's not as simple as just give them more of everything. Some drugs may need higher doses, but others may not. The art of anesthesia is tailoring care to each patient's individual physiology. Like when people ask me what being an anesthesiologist is really like, I like to say it's like being a pilot, except you're flying a different plane every time and there's not always a maintenance log. So sometimes it's brand new and flies like a dream, no problem. And sometimes it's old and run down and has almost crashed 100 times before, and like the upholstery's all torn and the TVs don't work and the landing gear sticks. But you still just got to do your best to fly it, keep everyone safe, and bring it back in for a landing, which isn't always easy. That's why we can't just rely on weight or standard dosing tables. Human variability is real, and hair color happens to be one of those rare visual clues that actually matters. So what's the takeaway here? The big lesson is that we live in an era where we're realizing more and more that one-size-fits-all dosing doesn't really work. Genetics, age, sex, body composition, and even race can influence how people respond to drugs. Redheads are a perfect example because the difference is visible. You can see the hair color and suspect what's going on genetically. But there are countless other variations in the population that we can't see, and those matter too. Someday we might run genetic tests before every surgery to fine-tune our anesthetic plans. But until then, awareness, vigilance, and tailoring care to each individual remain our best tools to keep our patients safe. So, why do redheads need more anesthesia than everyone else? It's because the MC1R mutation that makes their hair red also changes how their nervous system processes pain and responds to anesthetic drugs. For patients, this means you don't really have to worry, at least not in this day and age. Anesthesiologists are trained to adjust doses and monitor your responses closely. For providers, it's a reminder to keep your plans flexible and never assume one size fits all, especially if your redhead patient tells you they've had issues before. And for all of us, it's just another example of how fascinating and complex human biology can really be. If you found this interesting, and how could you not, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe for more deep dives into the world of anesthesia, and let me know in the comments. Redheads, have you noticed anesthesia works differently for you? And providers, have you seen this yourself in the OR?
Alright, that's all I have. I'm gonna end.
Alright, so we talked about that thing for a while.